All right, so this portion is going to be recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, please go ahead and drop now. You can always watch the recording later on from the YouTube channel. We have some exciting news coming out around Windows Server 2012, R2 and 2016 as it relates to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. We'll be going into public preview on this next month, so I figured now would be a good time to highlight this and let you guys know what the changes are. If anybody's using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint on Server 2012 R2 or 2016, you see big differences between Server 2019, Windows 10, and those legacy server operating systems. You have to install a management agent, OMS agent. It uses an older version of Sense, which is our sensor. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of things missing from the ability to actually do live response, to get files, stuff like that. This is all changing. What I'm going to talk about, is, our challenge, scope and changes, installation, onboarding, management, what you need to know. We'll have some links and some Q&A if we have time at the end. And really, when you look at it, is why are we making these changes? What are our challenges? We're always talking about human-operated ransomware challenges. High business impact. It gets targeted enterprise-wide. So basically, you have an attacker that's inside of your org. They're sitting there for quite some time, and then because there is actually real human beings in charge of it, not just some script going off in one fell swoop, they take over your entire domain. When you start to look at what's going on with the server operating systems, they're usually, the first ones that get attacked. Our current solution today, we will let you know right away, it does not meet the bar to detect or protect on these legacy operating systems. They're too easy to tamper, too easy to circumvent. When you look at, what we're expanding and doing, not only bringing things into a feature parity perspective, the first piece was to actually make them more resilient. We wanted to make it harder for people to get into the machines. We want to, our modern technology has a lot of intelligence within it, so it can monitor, spot for things like credential theft. We're able to get a good view of the lateral movements going on inside of an organization. With the current versions that are in 2012 R2 and 2016, we just can't do that. Of course, this depends all on visibility as well as our detection capabilities. Today, 2012 R2, we don't have Windows Defender, so we rely on SCEP, and both have an MMA-based Sense version, which this version is outdated. At the same time, we want to have industry-leading endpoint security platform, and when you look at it, Windows Server is a platform, and today we just don't have that. We've got some really good stuff going on in Server 2019 and Server 18.0 or whatever version it is. Sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. Basically, the ones that were built on Windows 10 with a lot of stuff built into the operating system. So we want to establish a core set of capabilities across the platform, including some of these legacy servers. Now, I know someone's probably going to ask, what about 2008 or 2012 without any, R2, any Windows 7? We're exploring options for those, but at this point in time, we really have no talking points, and we're still trying to make a determination if we're actually going to support those at this point. But just to get the weight off my chest from that, because I'm sure somebody was going to ask that at some point. So when you look at this screenshot, and I know it's a little bit of an eye candy, I'll make sure everybody gets the deck after I'm done talking, but you'll notice quite a few things going on here. So I'm going to do my little pointer here. You're going to, that didn't work. Oh, there we go. So you'll notice a couple things. The one thing that's not grayed out, or the one thing that is grayed out, is restrict app execution. In the past, if you looked at 2012 R2 or 2016, everything else is grayed out. Now we're actually bringing everything into full feature parity. So a bunch of buttons that were previously grayed out are not. The one thing that still remains behind is restrict app execution, and that's because that relies on Defender application restriction, and that's just part of the operating system. So we're trying to get as much feature parity as we can, with some of that still relies on the operating system itself. So again, the North Star is to be on par with 2019 Windows 10 as much as possible. We want to make sure that we have as much feature parity. And again, this is highly dependent on some of the operating system capabilities. For example, AMSI, if you're not familiar with it, that's our anti-malware scanning interface. This was introduced in Server 2016. So Server 2012 is not going to have that in there because it is part of the core operating system. So you're not going to see the anti-malware scanning interface or AMSI in there. So we just can't leverage it. This is not just a Microsoft problem, because there's lots of our security vendors, competition, if you will, that actually use AMSI as well, and they can't leverage it because it's just not part of the stack. One of the things that we always want to say is, even though we're coming out with changes to this particular stack, the best course of action is to always upgrade the operating system, get on the most modern operating system. We understand in a lot of cases you can't get there, and that's one of the reasons why we're starting to backport some of these features and to get you on the modern stack for that. So what's new, what's not? So if you look at the left, this is the current, this is 2012 R2 versus the new. And when you actually look at the way it works in 2012 R2 and Server 2016, the only thing that would be different is that AMSI is not going to be is not here, so AMSI would be there in 2016. You can see we have multiple agents that get installed. We have the Microsoft Management Agent that gets installed. We have our sensor that gets installed, and that sensor today is legacy. And even in 2012 R2, because Windows Defender was not part of the operating system, you would have to install System Center Endpoint Protection to get antivirus protection. All this is dependent on a lot of pieces that are in the back end, and a lot of separate installers, different deployment channels that are going on there. So what we're doing is moving everything so that everything's under the same deployment channel. If there's a new feature that comes out that's not operating system dependent for Server 2019, you're going to see that for down level legacy support as well. On the left side, like I said, we have multiple agents to be deployed, additional dependencies on the OS right now. We have separate installs channels. Single installer, when you look at the right, single installer that would deliver all the components at the same time. It includes our modern Defender, the anti-malware engine as well, which we call Next-Gen AV, and all of its cloud protection, behavioral monitoring, process inspection capabilities. On the EDR side, it will be highly protected EDR that can resist tampering. And I just don't, mean tamper protection feature that's inside of there, but additional hardening that will disallow unloading of the driver itself, making it much harder for the attacker to actually get rid of the sensors and the components. There will be no legacy or prerequisite on 2012 R2 or 2016, assuming that you have the updated OS today. This is inclusive of the Microsoft Management Agent as well. Just some of the capabilities, some of the key call outs, tamper protection, just as we have in 2019, which means that you simply won't be able to turn off real-time protection. You will not be able to turn off EDR, even if you are an admin. We will have additional protection capabilities, very high level ASR parity within 2019, though there might be some key lacking components, those mostly dependent on things like AMSI, as I had mentioned earlier. Rich analyst response capabilities such as live response, auto incident response, isolate, get file, AV scan, with one key exception that I had mentioned, restrict app execution mode, and this requires Windows Defender application control. And this is not dependent in these operating systems, or not present in these operating systems. I want to say, a lot of times we get questions from our customer, hey, can this run with our existing antivirus in place? It can. I do want to say that, while we will still support passive mode and EDR block, you will still, if you want, you can still, use your existing AV, but I want to be absolutely clear that our best and hardest promise for protecting against human operating ransomware is using our entire stack, because one can work with the other, see what's going on. Everything is completely hardened down from our perspective. We're not worried about anybody injecting or removing drivers from somebody else's code. We're in control of everything from that aspect of it. But you can see, go ahead. Oh, I thought somebody had a question. You can see all the different feature parodies. You can see some of the stuff as we had mentioned around the attack surface reductions. Of course, that was a bad color to pick. I'm colorblind, so you can see some of where we have some minor differences in there. Yeah. But you can see what's going on, and you can read this for yourself, and all the different features that are coming out there, and there's a lot more than what's in there now. We're not changing our packaging from our modern packaging. So if you've installed this on the modern Windows Server or Windows 10, we're going to have that. It's going to be bundling into a single installer. We do not require the MMA agent. We're removing that as part of our install. And what I mean by removing it, we're removing our dependency from it. We're not actually going to remove the MMA agent because you might be using that for something else. So we're going to leave that behind, but we're going to remove our dependency on it. We're actually going to, and we'll talk about the installer in just a little bit, but from an Azure Defender, there's no change here. We will still use that portion of Azure. We will use the agent to deploy it, but not for MDE functionality. No different than deploying MDE via Azure Defender on 2019 today. If you deploy Azure Defender, the upgrade will be handled by Azure Defender. So if you're using it from there, it'll automatically upgrade it. If you're using SCM or scripts, we will have an upgrade path for you. And that'll come out as part of public preview and then part of GA. And as I had mentioned, the plan is to have this in public preview sometime next month. So from an installation perspective, first of all, we've changed over 40 pages of documents to reflect these changes when it goes live. This includes migration from old to new, high-level parity between operating systems. The only extra step in that installation package, since it's not part of your server operating system, is to install, you'll see here, the installation package. That's the only extra step. It's kind of when you install it like on a third party, whether it be Mac, Linux, they have the installation package and they have the onboarding package. The server 1803 and above, server 2019, it's built into the operating system. So all we have to do is deploy the onboarding package and then go ahead and enable it. In server 2012 R2, server 2016, there is an installation package and an onboarding package. You'll have all these different methods, the same that you do today, and I can't draw either. Local script, group policy, Microsoft Configuration Manager, VDI scripts, Azure Defender. This will be available for government tenants at the get-go as well. So as soon as it's released, if you happen to be running a GCC high, you might have a research enclave or something like that going on, you will be able to deploy it there as well. From an installation and onboarding, again, no more MMA dependencies. You can still use it, but MDE will ignore it. We will leave it alone, as I had mentioned, since you might be using it elsewhere. Integration with Azure Defender will catch up next month during the public preview. And this is more of like an internal Microsoft thing, but we're just waiting for some people to come back on vacation. But during the middle of the public preview, you'll see Azure Defender catch up. So when it first comes out, it's going to be available for SCCM, scripting, or install like that. From a migration with Azure Defender SCCM, we will automate with other solutions. We really won't know the state of that old solution. So we will actually, there will be no automation when it comes to that. What we will do is we will stop the old solution and start the new solution. No reboot needed. Basically, what you'll see in the back end, you'll see an mssense.exe stop working, and an mssense.exe will start running. It will be seamless for you guys, no reboot required. A couple things that you do have to make sure is that Defender, if you're using the Defender antivirus engine, is on its latest platform and the most up-to-date signature before upgrading, because the AV component needs to be up to date. Since this is part of the OS in 2016, there's no update to get the OS up to this state. A couple other things from a connectivity perspective: if you're allowing certain ports and certain pieces to go through your network and you're using on some of the legacy, you might be using an OMS gateway. You can't use the OMS gateway anymore. This is the way it is in 2019 already today. And of course, the reason why is because we're not using the MMA. There's no dependency on MMA anymore. There's also a new KB to update Sense, and it will have a new KB package as well. But you'll be able to see the different deployment updates. Installers, MSI can be run silently. Update machines have 0 prerequisites. Ensure Defender is fully updated on 2016. Parameter to immediately enter passive mode for convenience on third-party AV. One thing to note, and I'll mention it again at the end, unlike Windows 10, which will go into an automatic passive state if there's a third-party AV there, Server, even in Server 2019, does not work that way. There's a registry key that you have to set. And I'll make sure that I repeat that again, because that's going to be kind of important if you're using us in passive mode. So from a management perspective, so today you're going to have, we're going to have feature parity with 2019. So all the PowerShell commandlets, all the ADMX templates, they'll all be available in the management solutions. From an SCCM perspective, you need to be on at least 2107 to have policy. So today, in 2107, there's endpoint protection policies that you'll be able to push out with SCCM. If you want to upgrade and deploy, then you're going to have to upgrade your SCCM server to 2111. And that's because 2111 and above has the orchestration and the automation in it to actually do upgrade to from the old Defender for Endpoint to the new Defender for Endpoint. While the MEM portal at this time does not support servers, this solution does support being managed through MEM portal, so that when we are ready to actually start supporting that through MEM, the solution will be ready for that as well. We will also have a new dashboard experience coming soon with new health dashboard experience. This will provide consolidated view across all operating systems, including this new solution. This is the way it is today. So you can see on the left-hand side there, you've got Intune, cloud only, co-managed, cross-platform when it comes to client operating systems. And today you have the ability of doing an SCCM attach to basically have one place to manage everything. So, when you look at it on the right, SCCM is attached to MEM portal. So there is a co-managed option, Windows 10, and it's the same involved in the middle column where SCCM tenant is attached for running in custom SCCM infrastructures. You can attach the infrastructure to MEM portal and then perform policy management through the channel, and it will get applied to Windows 10, Windows Server, inclusive of the new double solution. This is already a way to unify your configuration management in the cloud if you want to go that route. Moving forward, we're actually going to be introducing something new. It's not ready for public preview yet, and there's really I don't have a timeline, but it is coming soon. And what we're working on next is a way to apply policies directly to devices. So for instance, if you deployed a server, it was not being managed by SCCM, that client would reach out to the EDR in the cloud. EDR would say, okay, this is not being managed. It would then pull policy from Microsoft Endpoint Manager and deploy that policy directly through our EDR component. So our EDR component is the channel through which policies arrive. in this net new option. It's also going to be not just for servers as well, but it'll be there for, any other device that's not, any other client device that's not being managed by Intune or anything like that. The EDR component is going to pull that down. Now, to emphasize, we support this management in the product today from the get-go, but the piece that's required to actually start sending these policies down to the machine is still a work in progress, and that is not yet in public preview, release date, a release date, nor do I have a date on when that's going to come out. So some known limitations. Again, you need to know that 2012 R2 Defender will not have a user interface. It's simply not there, and this is very deliberate on Microsoft's side. We don't want to make sure that the fact that there are no users on 2012 R2 if customers can help it. We run in a headless mode. We do support all management, centralized, PowerShell, otherwise. We just don't have a plan to bring a UX to 2012 R2. Make sure that you also fully understand the implications of not having an MMA agent, using things like OMS Gateway will not work. So customers will make sure that they need to have the same connectivity as equal to 2019. There are some other call outs there. You can read them yourselves. One thing that we do want to note is if you're going to upgrade the operating system on these server levels, you need to uninstall before you upgrade the operating system. And the reason we're saying this is because it's not part of the operating system, whereas in Server 2019, it's part of the operating system. You don't have to upgrade it because we're actually upgrading that at the same time. So when you're doing an OS upgrade, you have to uninstall, do the server operating system upgrade, and then reinstall. Again, if you want to run in passive mode, I said I was going to say this again. For those that are not familiar how it works, even on Server 2019, passive mode is supported, but you need to set a registry. It does not automatically go into passive mode, just like in Windows 10, where that is the case. So keep this in mind if you're using a third party. We strongly suggest and encourage you to look at both, our anti-malware engine and our EDR functionality. That's the end of my presentation. Open it up for any questions, any comments, any thoughts. Is anybody still there?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You only put half of us to sleep. You got to try better next time to get the rest of us.
Thank you.
I was thinking that this little Defender logo, we should all get tattooed on us. It's really rad.
The fact that we keep changing logos and stuff like that very often.
It'll be outdated in a couple months.
Yeah, I've got a couple tattoos, but I don't feel like having my whole body tattooed. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's not for me. All right. On that note, I'm going to stop the recording just in case.